All right, what's up, guys? Connor Ferguson here, live for Always Race Day with Glen Saville, one of my good friends, probably one of my best friends. You're going to be on the best man standings for my wedding when it happens. I'm just letting you know.
Oh, dude, that's not good.
We're going to get to it. Glen is a veteran sprint car racer, veteran dirt driver, been around the sport, engine builder, everything in between. This is kind of a mailbag episode, kind of a shooting the shit. We needed to get an episode back up. I'll explain that in a bit. We're gonna talk Corey Day, how hot he's been. We're gonna talk Bobby Pierce, back-to-back wins in the state of Iowa this week, and why I wasn't there to cover them. And I hate that I wasn't there, but we're gonna talk about it. And a lot of questions that you guys submitted, or you might have now. If you have any questions about dirt racing, anything that we start talking about, let us know. Shoot them in the comment section. We will see all of them, no matter if it's YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. And then without further ado, I want to say thank you to the fine folks of the Karl Auto Group. They sponsor everything that we do with Always Race Day, with the Always Race Day podcast. They are our presenting sponsors. If you need a car, look no further than them. They will get it to you very swiftly and very cleanly, as me and Damon like to guarantee. He's moving into his house this week. We couldn't get him on. But he is very, very apologetic to not be on. He sent me 4 texts. I think that's the best way I can summarize all of them. So let me play the intro and we'll get right into everything. All right, Glennie, how we doing?
Yes. Absolutely fine and dandy at the moment. How about you, Connor?
I'm fantastic. You look fantastic. The hat curve, it doesn't look crooked at all. It looks great. How do I look?
You look like you're just come off the rough scene of an adult film or something. Them glasses are falling down a fair bit, dude. You better do something about that.
The way you phrased that before we got on air was so much better than your PC version of whatever that was.
I better
take my glasses in still to get them tightened. These are somewhat new, and they fall down all the time if I look down. I'm trying to sink my ass into the chair a little bit here. Apologies for not having an episode for a while. I had a laptop take a crap on me. I had a second laptop then take a crap on me. The backup laptop failed. So just got the new laptop in this week. Thank you. Thank you to the fine folks that helped me make that happen. And then I would have been out covering the World of Outlaws late model circuit this week. My grandmother is in the hospital. But everything is good. She's stable condition, little scare. Not really sure what happened. But yeah, we are back now. I'm so excited to talk dirt racing. And I brought the best guy here to talk about it. Kind of a mailbag episode, kind of a little bit of everything. I think a good start to it, since the Outlaws got rained out tonight for late models. Glenn, I really want to ask you what you think about Corey Day. And I think I'm just going to straight up, what do you think about him? And then we'll kind of get into his accomplishments.
Am I not allowed to give you excuses for why I wasn't at the racetrack?
No, absolutely. I want that.
No, I don't have any, but,
okay,
just
gotcha.
figured I'd put that out there. So,
you look like you're in shape. Rounds of shape, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. The fact that I wasn't there just means I didn't want to be there. So there you go. No, Corey Day, he's, since the last time we spoke, he's about the only thing that's been consistent in racing lately. Between the weather and the up and down results that everyone's had, Corey seems to be about the only one that's actually consistently up there, and kids kicking goals. That's all there is to it at the moment.
Can I make you look stupid with a fellow Californian driver?
Yeah, go for it.
Brad Sweet does not look too bad right now.
Yeah, but he hasn't pulled anywhere near the prize money that Corey Day has.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Corey has, for a young kid, 17 or 18 years old.
something like that.
I'm going to get it wrong either way. It's a guess.
Yeah.
So he's 17 or 18.
I guess either way, it's jailbait no matter what. So just,
No, this is a great staggering points here, touching points. Corey, so he won at Knoxville, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the night before we did infield beers, I think with James McFadden on Friday night. And the funny thing was when I asked James to do that, he said it was kind of getting late and I never want to force anyone to do an interview in any capacity. If you say no comment, if you say don't talk to me, if you say I'll never interview with you again, not sure who would say that. But if you ever say that, like I never want to force anyone to do one. So James,
you mean I have an option to be on here?
What's that?
I have an option to be on here?
Yeah, you do. I know. I never told you that. You're the only one. But James looked at me and was like, "Can we do it tomorrow?" And I said, "Yeah, we could, but you had such a great run tonight. You're on the podium. If you finish 17th tomorrow, I wouldn't love doing it." And he's like, "Well, if I finish 17th, like all the more reason to have a beer with you." And I thought that was fantastic.
That's a pretty
next morning. I have a comment on there. Pissed as hell that we didn't do infield beers with Corey Day.
Well, you can't.
Absolutely livid that James McFadden got the infield beers invite, but not Corey Day, who's at least 2.5 years away from turning 21.
I guess you'd have to change the segment to infield cookies and milk. Who wants that?
Well, so a guy came up to me at Knoxville, and he was so nice. If you come up to me and you say you like what we do, like I'll sit there and talk to you. And he was very appreciative of it. Like sent me this long paragraph about how great I was. And I'm hyping myself up way too much because I'm not that great, but it took me by surprise. And we were kind of joking about that comment. And he's like, "Well, I know a guy down there with some Bush NA. Why don't you just do it with that?" And so if the opportunity arises up in the Nationals, we will have infield beers with Corey with non-alcoholic Busch Light.
Is it the same though?
Well, I mean, it's as close as you can get. If you have him drink milk, I think that he's not winning the Indy 500 yet.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, but still,
he could. I don't know. So he's obviously won the most money in sprint car racing this year of anyone in the country. There are inklings, and this happens with every up and coming dirt racer. Like, will they go chase NASCAR? Will they go chase asphalt? Will they go chase IndyCar? What do you think of what Corey Day's been able to do? And he won a super late model race for Junior Motorsports. And he's the first one to say he had the best car there. He's the first one to completely, hey, I expected to win that race because they put me in the best equipment. He won that. He won the Knoxville World of Outlaws race. That was a really fight to the end with one of the toughest fields in the country, and won that on Saturday night. That was impressive. Then he went out and won Dirt Cup on Saturday at Skagit. It seems like there's nothing he can't do right now. What do you think about his trajectory in his career, and where do you think he's going to
go? Look, it kind of goes back. This almost goes to the high limit World of Outlaw debate, and kind of why we need them. We need both of them series in the sport, but unfortunately, they've probably come along just a little bit too early to bring the finances and the resources we need to keep kids like him in the sport. It'd be nice to keep him in the sport, and I think a lot of that's going to depend on sort of where he goes once he gets to the pavement. If he has the right people coaching him and the right people teaching him how to run pavement properly and become the next Christopher Bell or Kyle Larson or someone like that, then I kind of feel as though it'll be a similar thing to Kyle. He'll come back as much as he can, but it's sort of, I think it opens up a little bit more of that debate about why we need high limit, why we need the World of Outlaws, why we need the streaming money that they keep talking about to keep these new young up and coming drivers in the sport, for sure.
Yeah, and another good thing, and maybe we'll get back to Corey, and you guys leave your questions if you have any, because we got a couple to answer anyways, and we're kind of letting this be a free flow, what episode. But Glenn, how do you think it feels like to me that if you're going to have a split, if you're going to have any sort of this, I don't know, war between two national tours or whatever you'd like to call it, feels like it's working pretty well halfway through the calendar year so far between High Limit and the World of Outlaws. What do you think?
I think it's great. I think a lot of the hype was, Storm and Teacup. It was just, at the end of the day, the High Limit deal works for some guys, the World of Outlaws works for others, and we kind of needed some other series to allow some of the local guys to step up a little bit, step up to that next level. But also, everybody was sort of worried about the whole, Pennsylvania Speed Week, Ohio Speed Week, all that sort of stuff, all those staple all-star races. They haven't suffered. They've just allowed the local guys to come along and hit the highlights and sort of, make the headlines a little bit more than what they might have if an all-star show had been there or the World of Outlaws had been there or something like that. So I think it's good. I think it's a step in the right direction at least. And now the biggest thing, like I said, is to make sure the drivers get that streaming money that they probably need to keep these younger kids in the sport. That's my opinion. In counteracting that, I suppose, a little bit is hopefully it just doesn't create a too big a gap between the top end of the sport and the bottom end of the sport, to where some of these talents can't necessarily bridge the gap to make it to the top level that they need to be at. So
yeah, absolutely. And
I think there's a lot of issues need to be addressed still, but I think the trajectory of the sport is in the right direction. It's just, it's going to take some time and some tweaking and the right people in the right places to put the right moves in place.
No, let's dig into that a little bit if you want to. I'm guessing you don't want to. You're always scared about going live or anything with your mouth. And
well,
you gotta say, like, you off the cuff, like if you just let your guard down, it's so much better than when you try to polish it up and make it just a tad worse.
Well, yeah, but if we really want to know what I think of the sport, probably the that question last night, the High Limit race, the what was it, the question
we're getting
9 or whatever.
Hold on. I want to ask you, where do you said that there's some things that could be better. I want you to talk about that first. What could be better with High Limit in the World of Outlaws? And I have some things too, but I want to hear from you and hear what your opinion is.
Well, my honest opinion, like I said a minute ago, is I hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't widen the gap between a local guy being able to turn up and compete at those races, and it's great to give the top end of the sport a bunch of money, but if the local guy can't turn up and compete, there's going to get to a point where he's not going to want to compete, or they're going to get so used up trying to compete that they get out of the sport and they don't continue on, which at the end of the day doesn't necessarily affect the top end of the sport, but it affects the local car count. So that has to be, I'm not going to say, probably kept in check more than anything, just sort of make sure that the local end of the sport isn't, and that might come down to, I'm not necessarily talking about 410s. I'm still, the 360s and 305 guys as well need to at least be looked at and considered in that side of the argument too, because, some of the rule changes at the top end of the sport may also affect them, down the line. So
yeah, and
there's that.
It's really tough with those 360 guys that all the costs like mirror 410 costs almost.
Yep.
They're really close, and the race reward money. We're really blessed in Knoxville. If you come down to Knoxville and watch a race and see the purse payouts for 360s for a local show, and we call it local, there's 5 top 25 guys in the country racing at Knoxville every Saturday.
Oh, right? Definitely. And
incredibly blessed on the 410 side, but 360, they got that booster club. And man, oh man, do they work their asses off to get the money in these guys' pockets. It's a fantastic place to race, and it still isn't enough for the small town Eric Bridger local team that hey, their sprint car is their sprint car and their jobs are their jobs. And Eric had to get out of the sport. One of the best Pace Pro 305, whatever you want to call it, class drivers at Knoxville in the history of the track.
Yep. Yeah, and that's, I guess that's part of my frustration is that's Knoxville shouldn't be the exception. It should just be the general rule. It'd be nice if that was the way it is. And I get that it's not the same, wherever you go in the country. It is tough, but it's tough to draw a consistent weekly prize money payout and pool and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, I've sort of said this to a few promoters before. I don't really care what you pay to win. Pay the competitors enough to come back the following week. And if they don't do that, it just makes it hard. It makes it really hard. So
yeah, what sounds better? What sounds better to you? Like this race is paying $10,000 to start, or this race pays as much of a World of Outlaws usual race pays to win to start.
Well,
like it's tough to market,
the start money for sure, because especially the guys that.
And I'm not putting that up against, go put this big number up because that's how much it pays to win and that will draw fans. I'm trying to say is it's really difficult to market the money in the back of the field, and I'm not exactly sure why that is, but $250,000 to win resonates with a casual fan more than $10,000 to start in just about any way you put it. You have to tell them, hey, the National Series pays this to win every race. We're paying that if you get 24th.
Well, but so once again, that goes back to promotion, and that's their job to find that little hook to be able to advertise to get people in the gate. But if and I guess I'm talking about the sport on a local level, you still need to be able to pay your competitors enough to cover their pit passes and a little bit of I'm not going to say everything, but enough to cover some of the costs just to get the car to the track in the first place. And like I said, the World of Outlaws races, the high limit races, all those sorts of things, they're doing a great job. They really are. But there becomes that point where the local level, I'm not going to say needs to step up their game, but maybe sort of. Well, actually, I ran into this same thing in a race the other week. It was a co-sanction race, and even though the total purse was the same for both sanctions, it was dished up differently between the two sanctions, and the one sanction paid more to win but less down the line. And the guys from that sanction were complaining that even though they made more money in the positions that they finished, they were still complaining that it didn't pay the same amount to win. And I kind of question that logic with the way the sport's going.
Yeah, especially with there's one guy there that's going to win the race, not 10.
That's right. It's no good having one guy as ATM every week and he turns up and cleans up and the rest of the field's got to struggle. That's what I say. You need. It's great to have $1 million purse to win, but if it only pays $100 to start, nobody's going to show up. It doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I ask you this, and if you guys have questions on, you can ask NASCAR, IndyCar, or whatever you want. I was just at the Iowa Cup race.
Don't ask NASCAR. I don't know anything about it.
You don't want any NASCAR. Anyway, so compare it to Iowa NASCAR. I'm walking into the track on one of the days. I think it was Saturday. And there's a pit crew there, and the security guard is not letting him cross into this gate. They're about 120 feet from pit road. Mm-hmm. They're dressed in fire suits. They're all obviously pit crew guys. One guy has a rack of tires that he's trying to get through this gate. And I'm walking through from the other side. I've been let in this NASCAR Cup Series garage, whatever area you would like to call it. And this guy is just giving these guys fits. And I'm trying to sit there and wait politely just in case he's going to give me a fit and tell me to walk around this fence because walking 2,000 extra feet is going to make a difference. Later that weekend when I was trying to get out and get to Knoxville, it did for some reason because they just listen to what NASCAR says and NASCAR just gives them BS directions and then they get all I have a big dick, I have a big truck, whatever compensation issues they want to say. So I walk behind the guy as he's bitching to the pit crew member that's showing his NASCAR hard card, which is like, we get everywhere. Don't screw with me. Yeah.
Unlimited. Yeah.
Essentially, I'm generalizing everybody. And I walk up to the tire guy and I go, hey, just so you know, this gate over here, you can just walk right over here. They're not even looking at it. It goes this way. I'll show you where to go. And he's so thankful. Like, just the nicest dude possible. Works for Ross Chastain's pit crew. Very nice guy. His name's Matt. I think Shepard's his last name. Don't quote me on that. I'll look it up for the next show. But very nice guy. And it begs the question, should pit crews for these teams be paying pit passes? Because they're there to work. They're there to do the job of their team. Should they pay the pit passes up front and then get some of the money back in reward money? Does any of that reward money go to the pit crews to pay those pit passes? That's one thing that I really haven't asked about a lot in my career covering dirt racing.
It depends.
It's a question. It's because of how the sport came up, right?
Yeah.
For years, everyone paid their pit passes because they were just people. Now it's become more professionalized. You have a pit crew, you have a crew chief, you have this guy, you have this guy. But the money and the foundation in the setup, for lack of a better term, I'm sorry, I'll figure it out at some point in my head here. But the way it's set up is cognizant to having pit crews pay their pit passes.
Well,
and what I want to ask is that needed with the money structure, and it likely is. Everything's been built with all these guys paying this much money, putting this much money here and there.
Okay, so here's the problem. At the end of the day, as a racetrack goes, you've got X amount of costs straight off the bat. You know, whether it be insurance or
putting tractor tires in the infield because that's going to make people drive around the corners better.
Yeah, that's
sorry. I'll never get. That's a good topic. If you have any questions, leave them here. I fucking hate tractor tires. They're stupid.
Why? They're great. They're really good for chassis and front end builders.
Exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. I would put 700 cones like this tall around a corner, and if you hit a cone, it's a 5-second penalty before I'd put tractor tires on my damn racetrack. Dumbest thing you do. You just cost race car drivers money, and you cause people to power out of wrecks that they shouldn't have to gas out of, just like the 360 rule. Anyways, we'll get to that part. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun on everything here.
You sound like you belong in Australia with that statement. I hate tractor tires. I hate tractor tires.
I want to belong down there.
Traction control. Everyone's running traction control. I hate tractor tires. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. That's exactly how I sound, I assume.
Well, I don't know. Like, there's so many different costs involved. So at the end of the day, if the track itself is structuring their purse and their nightly expenses off X amount of pit passes and stuff like that, then you need it. You need everyone to pay at some point. Motor racing's always been pay to play in some way, shape, or form. You'll never ever change that. It tends to be at the local level that it's the competitor pays to play, and that's just kind of the way it is. Like, it's expected. So, at the top end of the sport, they've got their deals that allow the crew guys to get in for free and stuff like that. But there's also part of that's expected that to run some of those bigger shows, you're also going to have sponsors or presenting sponsors or that kind of thing in the first place. So to cover those costs, but at a local level where the competitor is literally paying every step of the way, then no, the crew guys pay to get in, the driver pays to get in. It's just the way it is. So, yeah,
and I compare it a lot to NASCAR and how they've come up with their charter arrangements and how much money the teams get. And a couple years ago, I don't know if it's exactly this way now, but a couple years ago, the Cup Series got 91% of the revenue from TV revenue and the agreement and the collective bargaining and all that. Sorry if I misspoke any of those words. I think I got it right, but Xfinity got 4%, Trucks got 3%. Just absolutely astronomically not fair to the level to calling it the AAA series, the AA series, the single A series for ARCA. They're not getting any money, but that's how the structure was coming up. So you keep, you have to keep it that way. Otherwise, there's all this money. Where does that go? You have a big pit. And that's like, I don't think pit crews should have to pay a pit pass. I don't. But where do you put that money? That's the other, it's a double-edged sword. So part of that, good conversation to go into. They had this question on the high limit race on Wednesday. The Butler Built fan question of the week, or whatever they call it. Glenn put that company name. If I botched any of that, that's on Glenn. Glenn, what change would you implement in dirt track racing or sprint car racing specifically? What would be the first thing you would do?
Cut the damn roll cages off and see how big these kids' balls really are. Honestly.
I'm glad you didn't shy away from that one. That's fantastic.
Well, because it's true. These kids come in loaded and, think they've never been taught any discipline, and they just come in and pull out another race car. If they tear one up, they don't give a shit. Sorry, I sound like a bit of twisted race car or ex-race car, washed up race car driver or whatever I am at this point. But, you watch the way some of these kids drive, and I guarantee you, if we took away, I'm not going to say take away the safety aspect of it, but I do think the safety side of the sport needs to be, it needs a lot more, it needs to be looked at a lot more. I was lucky enough to start in the sport before we had containment seats, and crashing without a containment seat and crashing containment seat are two very, very different crashes.
Mm-hmm. Which
things like that.
Straight up, which one's better? Is containment seat
without the containment seat. Yeah.
And you're a guy that, and I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off. This is bad interviewing on my end. You're a guy that also doesn't believe in the Hans device as much in specific situations in dirt racing. Yeah.
I think for sprint car and midget racing and Silver Crown or whatever, because we sit so upright, they're about the dumbest thing you can possibly come up with.
Now, and explain that, because it's about your neck moving left and right, correct?
Well, so the Hans device, and I know I'm going to get a whole bunch of crap for this, and that's
no, and it's okay. I got your back.
No, I don't care. The keyboard warriors can have at it, but because of the way we sit in the car, our pelvis sits directly under our spine. The Hans device was designed more for cars, and I understand there's different angles and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it doesn't. The Hans device itself stops front and back movement. Because of the way we sit in our cars, we don't necessarily lock our pelvis in place like you do in a lay down car or a cup car or any other sort of car. We sit in such a unique position in sprint car, midget, Silver Crown cars.
And we were covering, we were out at Gio Selzy's Ultimate Fan Experience thing, and they had made a deal with Brett Moffitt, the only Iowan to ever win one of the premier NASCAR championships. He won a Truck Series title in 2018. Should have won one a couple years later, and should have won at Knoxville. And still the worst call in NASCAR history. I will stand by that till the day I die. He was talking about how awkward. What's that?
Youngest feature winner at Knoxville.
The youngest A-main winner of all time at Knoxville, which is the picture of him with the trophy girls back in the day, because that was a thing at Knoxville way back when. God, it's so funny.
There's an infield milk and cookies for you.
yeah. There's no Bush and A around in 2012 to do infield beers with that. Oh man. But yeah, Brett was commenting on how different it is driving, upright with your elbows in like this, to where NASCAR, you're closer to where you sit in a car. You're still elbows in like that, kind of, until you get in the turn. You got to really throw your muscle into it, but it's a way different seat.
Yeah. Well, it's a different seat. It's a different seating position. And my whole thing behind the Hans device and that sort of stuff is, the Hans device does its job and stops your skull, but your skull gets to a certain point and stops. But because of the way we sit in the cars, there really isn't anything that actually stops our pelvis from coming through the base of our spine. And I feel as though it's not something that anybody's ever really looked at. But my observation on the sport for as long as I've been in it, we've got more middle to sort of upper back fractures than we've ever seen before. And we get more concussions and stuff like that. Concussion protocol has become somewhat of an issue, and a lot of people say, well, we got to have these things. The problem is a lot of the guys that are racing now haven't really raced without that stuff, so they don't know any different. So they're not going to force the issue. But a lot of the older guys that have crashed both ways, I don't know. That's my observation. I just think things like that could be looked at a lot differently, and need.
So you're saying the older guys. You're saying the older guys are more cautious, obviously.
They're probably more cautious to say anything because they don't want to upset the apple cart or rock the boat or however you want to put it. But maybe to a flow racing. I'll say, I talked to Casey Kane at Eldora last year. If you search Always Race Day and Casey Kane's name in Eldora, you'll find it. Really treacherous track. I'll give you guys a behind the scenes look here, but Matt Weaver came out to me 17 laps into the King's Royal and said, do you think what I'm thinking right now? And I said, I don't know. Someone could crash and die tonight. And he echoed my statement. And so that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. And sorry to Matt if he didn't want that out there. But that's what we were thinking, both of us. So I feel comfortable putting that out. But Casey told us after the race on video, and that's on our YouTube, that there was, some lines where he was like, I'm just not going to run that. Those guys are throwing their balls on the table, and I'm not going to do that. Mm-hmm. And that's a major part of it. That's the difference between a lot of the kids that just come into the sport. It doesn't. The risk versus the reward, no offense to Casey, but Casey's at the tail end of his career. He's already proved his point. He's proven he knows how to win races and all that sort of stuff.
I will say to Casey, because a lot of people have that opinion of him. That guy is more competitive than 90% of the sprint car field in general.
Don't get me wrong, he is. He's definitely he's a great race car driver. And
that's why we do Casey Kane Friday every week. Is that guy wants to fucking win, and that's what he wants to fucking do.
You do Casey Kane Friday, I do Pants Off Friday. Either way, but like the difference is he knows when to. He knows where the line is, and that takes a little bit. You see some of these kids get in there and they turn the helmet on or they put the helmet on. It's got a little button on the top of the head that turns their brain off. And when you got your headstock on back to front to keep the dirt out of your eyes, they just hold it flat and see what happens.
Now, has midget racing changed? Any of this? And I want to get to fire bottles as well, but you led me into has midget racing feels like to me every time I watch a midget race with my dad. It's usually the time where I have midgets hooked up to the TV. I'm going the extra mile to put them there because my dad wants to watch a race and that's what's on. Mm-hmm. And it's usually a wreck fest. It is the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series of dirt racing.
Mm-hmm.
It is Extreme Outlaws, USAC midgets. Doesn't matter which one it is. There is California sliders being thrown, and there is wheel-to-wheel contact being had, and there is cars flipping upside down, and then there's a car stopping and just inching in tap, and that's enough to be involved in the wreck.
Yeah.
And the whole fucking scene of it, I feel like is completely ruined. It needs fixed. I don't know where to start. But goddamn, these kids fucking throw shit left and right.
A lot of it comes back to this. I grew up.
I'm not alleviating Thomas Meseraull.
No.
Great of a quote as he is, he throws some slide or die, right? But that is absolutely a saying, and there's a way of thinking, but it's very much like, man, you had no chance of hitting that slider. What are you doing?
Yeah, but at that point, he's a product of his environment. I grew up around midgets when men raced them. Sleepy Trip, Kevin Olson.
I love this.
Adults, like proper guys that would get out and they would beat your head in if you did something stupid like that. The classes full of these young punk kids that aren't really learning anything, coming out of micros and all this sort of stuff, and they're trying to make a name for themselves. They're trying to be the next Jeff Gordon, I guess you could say. And
did you ever race against him?
no, I never raced against him.
No, you were still in Australia, right?
Yeah, I'm not that old.
Tell the people who you did race against. You raced against Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah, in go-karts a couple of times. I don't know.
Beat him by 3 seconds is what Glenn told me every time he raced him.
I did?
That's what you said.
Must have been drinking that night.
Who the fuck's going to look that up? That's all I'm saying.
It's online.
Who's going to know where to look for that? I have a hard enough time finding the national sprint car schedule for Australia now.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. There might be some footage of it. I know there's some people have sent me footage of me racing go-karts, so there's plenty of it. But yeah, there's a few V8 supercar guys and different ones. So I don't know. Go-karts in Australia were pretty. They were all road course, upright karts, I guess the Americans call them. So,
are you surprised that you said you raced against a few supercars guys? Are you surprised at all that Shane Van Gisbergen and there's another one, Kobayashi, I think is his name. He's got a similar name to the hot dog eating guy.
Brody Kostecki.
Because oh my god, I feel that's such a dick thing for me to. God, I'm sorry. It was Kostecki, but there's a different one, and I feel like his first name is Kamui. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I haven't got a clue.
That's okay. He hasn't ran more than one NASCAR race yet. But the supercars guys look super quick, especially Shane. Shane looks talented as hell. Are you surprised at all from that, from how they race down there and in what that series is? No,
since Cup went to a very, very similar car to what the V8 supercar is, it's kind of allowed the V8 supercar guys to come across a lot easier and made that transition a lot easier. So no, that doesn't surprise me. I think the only reason they'd really struggle anymore is because none of them race on ovals in Australia. But when it comes to road courses, yeah, they're all, they're going to be up the front no matter what, just because that's all they race on. But once the Australian guys get used to the oval side of racing and how different that style of racing is, I think that'd be okay. But no, I've seen there's a few of them come over, and there was another kid I don't know, mutual friends with him somehow from go-karts, I guess, that he was coming over here trying to run some cup stuff as well. So
what's his name? Give him a shout out.
I don't know his name. I think it was for.
Sorry, Len.
No, I know. I think it was for Keselowski. What's Roush Fenway Keselowski?
Roush Fenway Keselowski is the name.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. I think he was running for them from memory. It was just something that popped up on Facebook when I was scrolling through there, and I just kind of left it at that. Maybe it might have been Will Brown or someone like that. Maybe.
I'm trying to get a news story to Google here. What's the situation like in Australia now? I feel like no one's talked about it. Obviously, they're in their off season, kind of after the premiere of the classic and all that. What's the situation like for Australian sprint car racing? Is the government still fiddling their thumbs?
So Eastern Creek's up and running. Eastern Creek, which was that new big facility that's
the one track that was big in question with the government and everything.
Yeah, that's all up and running. They've run a couple of nights there with they got new management in it and all that sort of stuff. The new group reworked the track and reshaped it and did a heck of a job. Gary Warmington is now in charge of it. He's sort of the general manager. Marty Perovich is doing the track prep. Marty's an ex-racer, which some Knoxville fans would know and remember him. From what I've seen and just looking at the videos and stuff, the track is really turned around. It's either right around the bottom or up on the fence, and they're doing a great job. As for other things that I've sort of seen and kind of just sort of paid attention to from a sanctioning body point of view, I think Jason McIver is now in charge of the SCCA. So that's sort of a change of the sanctioning body, so to speak, that controls the racing, like the sprint car racing side of things in Australia.
All right, hold on here. All right, Cam Waters. Yeah,
Yeah, I know. I know of Cam. I don't know him personally.
that's not the guy you were thinking of.
No, someone else. But I
Oh,
think you mentioned it that Cam. I think Cam has come over here or something as well
yeah,
to
I
run.
would like him.
But
He's racing for RFK.
he's been
He raced
he's
at
been running.
Sonoma. He got 35th.
Yeah, he's been running sprint cars in Australia though, Cam,
Yeah,
and been.
he's run supercars and
Mhm.
he ran in, it looks like he ran in both the Sprint Car Championship and the Grand Annual.
Yeah, yep, yeah. He's come up with a deal to go back and run some sprint car stuff on and off, and
I'm
bits
choosing to
and
be a
pieces
fan
like
of
that.
this guy. Get him on my show. You can be on it.
Me?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm not as connected to the stars as you are.
Yeah, you are in Australia.
No, just no. No.
I'll find a way. I'm going to get you on there with him.
They've all forgotten who I am. So
What we should do is we'll get him on and we'll convince him that when you were younger, he was, say you were 17, he was 12, and he's racing against you. And he dumped you.
No. Not none of. I didn't necessarily like the guys like him. I don't remember him personally, but there was like there's different ones.
Glenn, we can tell him you're like 27.
No,
it's okay.
No. This is truth. No, there's a lot of those kids that I remember. You know, they were little kids when they first started racing, as I was getting out of karts and stuff like that as well. So, I sort of, my dad with the go-kart shop, I still kind of paid attention to who was doing what, who was sort of trying to come through the sport. So
absolutely. Yeah. Now I want to talk to you about a little bit about we're going to do promoters here in a second. We're going to talk about Hughes's, but Brad Sweet, his answer to that question on the High Limit broadcast was that he would ban not having a rock screen in a car.
Yep.
What do you think the ramifications would be from that? And why do you think that, as a guy who's making his own series, why did he not mandate that rock screens would have to be used?
Well,
and I
when you try
this as, being neutral on this rock screen or no rock screen argument. I know guys that run both. I'm friends with guys that run either a rock screen or none. I feel like there's some guys that run High Limit full time that would not run High Limit full time if they said every High Limit race you have to have a rock screen. So I assume that's why you wouldn't do that in the first place, but I wanted to get your opinion on that when I heard that. That was the first thing I thought about doing this episode and everything like that.
Well, I personally run a rock screen because they're mandated in Australia, and that's what I've always known. So we'll get that bit out of the way. But
I grew up playing hockey with a cage in front of my face, and now I wear a half shield and I have a chipped front tooth.
Exactly. So it's the same with all. Yeah, it's the same with all these kids that are coming into the sport now. They don't know anything other than containment seats and harness devices. So it is what it is. But there's a lot of guys that don't like them for the simple fact that they're a distraction.
And I agree. So why I brought that up is looking through a hockey cage, and then the first game you play without it, you feel so free. It's probably very similar to cigarettes.
Yeah,
honestly,
here's
the first time you do it is the best time that it's going to be.
Here's the problem, and this is sort of my, kind of more from experience. But I've had rock screens that, they're strong and solid, and they're mounted on 4 points, and they've got this and they've got that, and nothing should break them. And there they are sitting on my lap. So whilst they should be mandated, they actually need to do the job as well. They're still not going to stop it. Like most rock screens, they're not going to stop a torsion bar coming through your head or something like that. At the end of the day, nothing beats having a strong helmet and having a helmet that's going to do the job in the first place. But it kind of goes back to this safety thing. We've been seeing a lot in the sport lately of different things that aren't just different issues that raise their head. I think it was Jeremy Elliott the other day said, when are we going to stop offering prayers and actually do something about the
Yeah,
problem.
and I had an interview with Justin Henderson a couple years ago, maybe 2022, maybe 2023, and we were talking. There needs to be a time where the sport is proactive and not reactive.
Yep.
And I feel like even the fire bottles, you can view that. And I've said that. I've wrote it. So if you're calling me a two-face, this or that, whatever you want to say behind my back, all good. Say it to my face. I'd love that. Have a conversation with me, please. But I've wrote like that fire bottle is supposed to suppress the fire. And that's what it's supposed to do. We should put them in all the cars. Yeah. Well, it hasn't. I haven't seen it in Iraq really work great. I think there's one at Cedar Lake, I believe. Could have been a different track, honestly.
Yep.
And I think one at Knoxville during Nationals last year worked. I've seen a lot. I've seen the same amount or more of where it didn't go off.
Yep.
And it didn't fucking work. But Industrious Solutions.
Yep.
And
Inferno
Armor.
Here's my opinion on the whole thing. Mandate all the fire bottles you want. That's great. It does a good job. But at the end of the
that's my thing. Is these fire bottles cost a lot of money, and every time they go off, that's more money you got to pay them.
Yep.
And it doesn't feel like they work more than 50% of the time, in my opinion.
Well,
and I'm sorry if you guys want to do an advertising deal with us. I'd love to. I will delete this part of the podcast. I'm kidding, but it just doesn't feel like there's questions on where you mount it. And then there's questions on if it's going to go off. And then there's questions on if it does go off in the wreck. And I just feel like it's unreliable to paying, $700, $800, $900 for this bottle that, 30% chance of saving your life. That's great. That's awesome. But it's better than nothing. But we have Kevin's company and Jamie and Jacob Ingalls, Jamie Ball and Jacob Ingalls, Industrious Solutions, in what happened with Chase. I feel like the fire bottle didn't go off until the end, and Chase had his life saved from those two companies and those two solutions to issues. Not to put a pun in the actual name of the company, but I'm just like, why are we doing the fire bottle thing if it's not, more than 50% guaranteed to work?
Here's the issue in the first place. We don't need to be testing in the field before we mandate these things. We need some things. Maybe some of these ideas that we've had in the sport have been a knee-jerk reaction. There really isn't a place to test a lot of this stuff except in the field. So at that point, okay, that's fine. Most of us competitors will run it anyway, and we'll put up with the price, but at least review it at the end and figure out a way of improving it. Right. And I feel the other thing is too with the sprint car one, it has to be I think it's 17.3, not 17.1 or 17.2. SFI standards aren't legal. You've got to have the specific sprint car one. But Race Saver guys, 305 Race Saver rules, they've had that mandated since the very beginning. Had a fire bottle rule. You get 25-pound weight break, I believe, if you've got one on. So this kind of goes back to the safety things. We kind of need to get everybody on the same page. But on top of that, why did we have the fire in the first place? It was because a fuel tank exploded, and it's not the first time it's happened. So it's great. The fire bottle, I feel, is more of a token gesture to the issue at hand in the first place. At the end of the day, we've got 25, 28, 30, 33 gallons, however big a fuel cell, one of those options, hanging off the back of the race car. Sometimes they're half full, sometimes they're full. Who knows? Whatever fuel load you're running at that time for whatever you're trying to do with a race car. But, the Silver Crown cars are I think they're 75 gallon or something like that. At the end of the day, we can put all the fire bottles on, we can have all the standards and all that sort of stuff, but there needs to be there needs to be a few other issues addressed at the same time. A few years ago, we had a fuel cell that was bladderless, and we worked out that whilst they were strong, if the minute they got a hole in them, they were useless. Well,
hold on. Describe to me what's it mean when you say a fuel cell that's bladderless?
So
how does it differentiate from what the fuel cells are now?
Okay, so at the moment the fuel cells we run are a molded plastic with a rubber bladder inside them that's supposed to be bulletproof. There is a standard on it. It's whatever that standard is. There are different options for that tank and that bladder system. Some are heavy, some are light. There's different options that you can get with it. A while ago, I want to say 7, 8, 10 years ago now, maybe, whatever it was. It's probably 8 or 9 years ago now. They came out with a fuel cell that didn't have that bladder in it, but they'd worked out how to infuse, I believe, Kevlar into the plastic. And the tank itself was supposed to be bulletproof and certain. It was it had a certain rating. Well, that was great until it either got sliced or hit in the wrong way and it would open up. But the tank itself was actually a lot stronger tank than the plastic that we run now. There wouldn't be any reason why we couldn't figure out our way of putting a bladder into that tank. It is the same mold, it's the same size, but the other, that kind of brings up another issue, though, is the fuel cell itself is so expensive that not so much at the top end of the sport, but at the bottom end of the sport, guys tend to skimp on that particular piece because it is such an expensive item. Now, I'm not saying that the Chase Randall crash, I know them guys, they would have had all the best of the best. I know that team does. But there needs to be something addressed in the first place. Like if that was a brand new fuel cell at the start of the season, who's to say it's going to happen? It's not going to happen again. It's not the first time. It won't be the last time. So we need to figure out a way of, making that part of the car stronger without hurting the integrity of the frame itself. Because at the end of the day, the fuel cell is bolted directly to our frame.
However heavy you make the fuel cell, it changes the handling of the race car.
Well, yeah, essentially, but also too, if you start putting it in too many places, if the fuel cell if the fuel cell gets hit, you may actually hurt the integrity of the roll cage, and at that point, potentially hurt the driver because the roll cage is attached to the seat, which is attached to the driver. So there's a lot of issues to be looked at on reinventing it all. But also too, the fuel cells have a habit of flying off in certain crashes too. So there's a lot of things that need to be addressed on that. But finding a group that don't just look at it from the top end of the sport. Their solution is typically just we'll just buy a new design. That's fine. But if it's going to work, we need something to be able to implement throughout all the levels of the sport as well. That's just part of it. That's where I think sprint car racing lacks, because it's splintered in every different direction that it goes. Whether it be, like I said earlier, 305, 360, 410, wing, non-wing, all that kind of stuff. That's probably one of the biggest issues. And we need to, if we're going to have a safety council, it needs to have a good cross section of representatives of the sport. Whether it just be, you can't just have tracks and promoters. You can't just have a series and a sanctioning body, and you can't anything like that.
You need a players' union sort of thing, even if it has promoters and it has. One guy, the promoter at Burlington, his name is escaping my head right now. I went to interview Brad Sweet after a high limit race out there, and he was up there asking him, how can we make that better? And they had a photo finish that night, James McFadden and Brad Sweet.
Yep.
Like, within 0.5-0.3 of a second of each other. And he's asking Brad, how can we make the track better? How can we prep the track differently? What can we do? I have this idea. I have this. And he asked me, and I literally introduced myself to him, and he's like, I know who you are, which doesn't happen to not a lot of promoters know who I am. It's flat out. And I'd like to think if you're a good promoter, you probably know our website, but that's like my standard. Like that's my line. But there needs to be, a committee, a group of people talking about this and being proactive, because it is obviously really important to keep the stars of the sport safe and everyone else in it. But you want to avoid, the bad look of, oh, hey, this guy died racing in your series. And I know it's a grim way. It's a grim way to look at it. And I don't like looking at it like that. But people on the outside look at it like that.
Well, at the end of the day,
Justin Wilson in IndyCar in 2017. I remember reading tweets. It's like, IndyCar kills people. IndyCar is not safe. IndyCar is this. IndyCar is that. And it's like, man, it's racing. It's a dangerous sport. We get it. But there absolutely needs to be more proactiveness in dirt racing. I feel like we only talk about anything safety-wise when accidents come up.
Yeah. And I'm probably one of the worst for saying smart-ass things like, cut the cages off it and see what happens. But
yeah, that's a different that's completely different avenue. You're 2 blocks to the right on East New York.
Well, yeah.
A completely different part of the city.
Yeah. Look, like I say, I don't know. If we're going to have a safe sport, it needs to be across the board, and it needs to be a common consensus amongst everyone that's not going to ruin the sport overnight. We've seen it in other facets of the sport where they've tried to bring in a rule that doesn't work, and it basically, the Silver Crown series was probably a pretty good example of that. They all but decimated the series with their whatever that car was that they tried to invent in the early 2000s.
I have no clue what you're talking about.
No,
we got it. We're going to do a different episode on that. I was going to interrupt you and say, what about wicker belts?
Well, okay. So, all right. Wicker belts. Did
I say belts? I'm sorry. I meant wicker belts.
Oh, wicker bills?
Every time. No. You said it right. I say it wrong every time.
Yeah. No. Well, okay. So if you want to go down that track, the whole wing thing is the wing thing kind of goes hand in hand with everything else, Okay, so we want to unlock the cars. Well, we're going to do that by taking the wing out of them and putting junk tires on them. Okay, so we haven't slowed our lap times down really. So all we do, we just go out and spend more money on shocks to compensate. It's a vicious circle. The whole thing is a vicious circle. They keep trying to slow the cars down, but all it does is we just go out and find other ways of being able to hook the cars back up. And what in my opinion, all it does is it slows a particular driver down for a little while, and other drivers will come to the front of the field. There's a few teams on the World of Outlaws, I would say, that the tire they had last year really, really benefited them. Whatever's going on this year, you look at the same team and they haven't won a race. So
I would look at the same teams that the tires were benefiting and say they might have put some tape over a logo on the tire. And I support when they put the tape on the logo of the tire at the time.
Yeah, but
at the time, I would like that specified. And if any of y'all from companies are pissed off about what I'm saying, shoot me a message.
But
love to talk.
Well, okay. So at the same time, like the tire issue, you want to. If we've got a safety council,
I didn't mean to get you into the tire issue thing, Glenn. That's okay.
No, I don't care.
We're somewhat past that, which is a miracle because the engine thing came up this year, and I haven't heard much about it in the last month. That's a good sign to me.
The engine thing? Oh, the
Just
part
just a
shortages?
shortage on getting engines, getting new
Oh,
engines.
it hasn't stopped.
Yeah,
It's
and I
it's
don't
still
think it fully has whatsoever. But I
it's
haven't heard complaints about it, and that's where I think it gets a little better. If I will say,
well, no,
if you're
everybody's
pissed
moved on.
off enough that you can't get an engine and you're texting me,
Mhm.
it's really fucking bad.
Yeah.
So I haven't gotten a text in 1 month on the dot.
Oh, maybe you just pissed the person off and they don't want to talk to you.
No, I mean I got
I'd
multiple.
say there's a better
I got
chance of.
multiple in May. Uh, but yeah, if you're texting me saying like we got to talk about this engine shit,
Well, the
it's
engine
gotten
thing
pretty
is
bad.
the engine thing is still a problem.
It
And,
absolutely is still a problem. I didn't mean to
yeah,
misspeak.
yeah, but yeah, the tire thing. Like, okay, so you go back to that. If you've got this, I don't even think you could call it a safety council, but if you've got this board of representatives, there's no reason why we can't turn around and bring an engineer from Hoosier, bring an engineer from American Racer, bring an engineer from DirtX, bring an engineer from Goodyear, put all four of them in a room
You
and
think now
design
there's
a
one
tire.
company in that group. There's one
Yeah.
company in that group. You think anyone from that company wants to listen to anyone from the other three?
Well,
That's my issue. That's my sole issue is if you're sitting here with so many racing series and you're
mhm.
making tires for them, and we still have lawnmower tires being shipped out that are new, and you can't figure out how to pay your employees better to get people to work, man, what are you
Well,
doing? And,
yeah,
and
but
I'm talking about Hoosier. It's not a secret. If you're listening to this, you probably already knew that. But man, the excuses that come out of that camp that I hear from other people, and it's not directly from Hoosier. I don't want to hate on Hoosier. They're obviously more reliable than Goodyear was in 2010 at the Knoxville Nationals, right? But it's like, man,
it's debatable.
hey, you can't find anyone to work. Pay your employees more. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
but
it. That's how it works.
it's more than that though. This is the thing. Like, and
Yeah,
this is what I was. This is the
I
point I
don't
was
mean
trying
to
to
black
get
and
to.
white it. You're right.
This is the point I was trying to get to though. There's no reason why you can't put an engineer from each company in a room and design a tire that all four of them can make. And I'm not saying you have to have all four of them, but you have a tire that you create a blueprint, and each brand builds to the blueprint. You pay some sort of a sanction fee or whatever to have your tire used in sprint cars each season or whatever, and it's distributed evenly, or I don't know how you do it, but there has to be a way of being able to turn around and say to each company, all right, this is what you make, and bring back basically what it is. And at the end of the day, you're looking for, if you want parity in your tires, every company has a tire that they build, but they build it to the spec. Each company has their own sort of variation on that spec, but the core construction, the parts of the tire that make the tire what it is, they're the same amongst the companies, and allow the teams to go and do their tire deals. Allow the teams to you know allow the teams a little bit of competition on that side of things as well. Not necessarily a different compound, but like I said, you put an engineer from each company in a room. They all come up with an agreement of this is what they want. But once you come up with that tire, you can also turn around and approach other companies all over the world and sell that blueprint to other different companies. That, if they wanted to get into dirt racing or something like that, heck, you could sell them to Vega in France or Pirelli or whoever. It doesn't matter who you sell it to, but at the end of the day, whatever that sanctioning fee is, it's distributed amongst whatever series, but the sport runs on the same, essentially runs on the same tire from a 410 all the way down to some of the local cars.
Yeah, and that's how much Hoosier has a lot of contingency money in there.
Well,
If Hoosier ever shut down, there would be a lot of money in dirt racing that there's just a hole. Just like if you stopped having Chris pit passes.
There wouldn't be, because you've still got the same amount of competitors trying to buy the same tires. So
no, it's not from a tire. Hoosier has a lot of contingency deals.
Yeah, yes and no.
This
But
track, this series, that track, right?
not necessarily.
There would
No,
just be
there's a lot of series mandate a particular brand of tire just so that they don't turn competitors away. It's a lot easier for everybody to run the same brand of tire, so they don't feel like they got to buy all these different brands of control right rears or spec right rears or something like that. And that's what I'm saying.
No. Let me. You're good. If Hoosier went away tomorrow,
Mhm.
where do you think? Do you think dirt race? I mean, it's the sport is going to survive. I'm not trying to say that.
Yeah, they'll survive. There's still going to be the same amount of competitors.
I mean, if there's a contingency sponsor deal in a series track, whatever, Hoosier's on it. They're on every single.
Yeah, but
on a car, and I don't know if that's a contract with the series.
But you're missing the point. They're forced to be on it. They're forced to be on it.
Yeah, because it's mandated from every series because they have a stronghold on the series, right?
No, not necessarily. There's different.
It's easier for officials, is what you're saying, is that having one tire is easier to mandate because then we have a relationship with this company that is going to build the tire that we're racing on. And if there's anything wrong with them, we can say, hey, go to this different version of the same tire from the same company. And that's way easier to regulate than having an open tire rule, yeah?
Not necessarily. At the end of the day, the top end of the sport dictates and goes out and does a sponsorship deal. And they say, all right, we're doing this sponsorship deal with these guys. So the flow-on effect is everybody else has to fall in line, right? If they turn around and, like I said, go back to that blueprint to where everybody else could run, you pick whatever brand you want, but as long as the tire conforms to the blueprint, send them away, do whatever testing you want or however you want to work, but bring it back to where, like I said, if the top end of the sport didn't just mandate the one tire, most of these local series would be able to go out and do a deal with someone else. I've been a part of different local series starting up, and they've been offered other tire brands to go and run. I've spoken to different ones about it, but they can't do it because another series, local or whatever, has decided to mandate a particular brand, and they've turned around and said, well, we don't really want to go against them because we don't want to turn their competitors away. We don't want to bring in that tire because there is an advantage or a disadvantage to a particular brand. So even though they're not getting any benefit from any particular tire company, they still mandate it in the first place. Now, the local guy that wants to go and run a national series or something like that, if he spends most of his local race and running on a different brand of what's raced on in those national series, he hasn't got really enough laps to be able to fine tune everything to go to those big events. So it's a lot of it is more just because the top end of the sport signed a certain deal and everybody just falls in line. And it is, in a certain sense, it's easier, but in a certain sense, it's still not, because you still got to run this particular compound for this group and this particular compound for that group and this particular, this left rear or this right rear or whatever it is for each, even though they got the same logo on the side of them. So, I think there could be. I'm not even going to open the tire rule up, but I think there could be a lot more common sense put into it. That doesn't necessarily. It'll still line everyone's pockets, but it kind of just brings some of the bitching out. If you're not fast enough, try another brand or go home and do your homework and get faster. One of the two.
Yeah, you know what the funny thing is we bitch in NASCAR about, and sorry to bring NASCAR into everything, into dirt racing again, but we bitch about how little tire degradation there is at Goodyear. And with their short track package and going into that Iowa race, that was a major talking point. And Iowa Speedway is the exception to the rule. Iowa Speedway always races good. It is insane. It is since 2018 to me. I've seen 14 races there that I've covered since 2018. And I think 5 of them in 2019 out of the 5 of the 6 in like a photo finish or like a finish less than a second between the two contenders. And obviously you guys know what NASCAR did, and they bought the track and didn't revive it. And thank God Hy-Vee and IndyCar did. Graham Ray Hall talks about that on our YouTube channel today. But I was joking with a guy from IndyCar about, you guys got it good. You guys got Firestone. They're never gonna short you guys. I mean, they're a fantastic tire company. Goodyear's the one that doesn't know how tire degradation can work and how you need softer tires than what you're giving them, and figure it out, right? And so we laughed about it. And 2 hours later, that was at 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, we interviewed drivers. Paddle Awards, and they're like, we have no tire degradation, absolutely zero. We ran 40 laps. I lost half a second on my lap time. This race is going to be shit. There's not going to be 2 lanes. And the rest of them were like, drivers complain about everything, this and that. And some shared the opinion. Some were the opposite on it. And them Graham Rahal being positive about it, people are going to be like, oh, he's a Hy-Vee guy. He's going to support the event no matter what, blah, blah, blah. But interesting comments from all the drivers we talked to. And I just thought it was interesting because we were like, yeah, Firestone will never screw you guys. And he's like, yeah, there's no tire deg. This track's going to suck. We got to figure it out. We got to have this practice session and run exclusively second groove. And I thought it was hilarious. Like, you just have to take it tongue in cheek and bite the bullet at some points. And hopefully it's good. That's every race that you go into, especially with questions of tires. That's exactly the viewpoint I go into it with is, a lot of guys are complaining, but hopefully it turns out all right.
Yeah, tires is such a can of worms because what works out in Pennsylvania won't work around here, and what works out in California won't work down south.
I do want to say I'm glad we're having this conversation in 2024 and not 2021. I'd have a lot of different words for what we were having.
Yeah, well, you'd probably.
I've grown up. I've matured. That's definitely part of it.
I don't know.
Like, oh, you could do no wrong, and this brand it could only do wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. Racing. It sort of has its ebb and its flow. One minute we're all on this particular brand, the next minute we're all screw them, we're going over here kind of thing. And I don't know. I don't know. I just think it's funny, the whole thing. Like I ran my car the other night, and it was just a local non-wing deal.
Tell me. I would have been there to cover it. Didn't tell me.
No, you would. No, you weren't there. The World of Outlaws. You were down at Knoxville. I know that.
Okay, that's fair.
So
probably would not have left Knoxville to go cover that, but that's fine.
No, definitely not. But like I was running tires from 2019 or something, some wing tires on my non-wing car from 2019. Just they didn't delaminate. I know that, so that was kind of nice.
I only know one guy that's happened to, and it happened to him twice.
Yeah, but like I said, the tire is such a can of worms because the minute they change them, all it makes us do is go, as drivers and car owners and all that. It just you just start tweaking on your shocks. That's all there is to it. And it just sort of one day you'll
have you ever looked into NASCAR's, like they have a camber kind of testing package where they put like, it looks like robotic like transformer arms on the outside of the tire. It measures the angle of the camber of the tire.
I've seen the testing.
Do you think that could ever work in dirt racing? Like, would you ever support trying to put that on a dirt car, sprint car, late model, or whatever?
I'm sure the late model guys.
See what the results were.
I'm sure the late model guys are probably doing that, and they're just not telling anyone.
The late model guys are engineers.
There's a reason some guys' tires last a lot longer at Eldora than others.
I want to do like a series on how different the two are. You have like it's literally like the redneck engineers and the next gen open wheel inch by inch racing product that sprint car is. I'm not trying to make sprint car racing sound better than late models. redneck engineers is really easy to say. I can't get two synonyms over on this side that say the same thing to what sprint car racing.
The thing is with sprint car racing, we really haven't changed. We haven't changed. Like the motor still sits in front of us.
That's kind of the beauty of it, right? Is it's changed a little bit, and the engines get better, and this gets better, and this gets more expensive. But
everything's refined. But at the end of the day, you still sit on top of the drive shaft. The motor's still in front of you. The steering box is banging up against your knees. The throttle goes up and down. The brake pedal goes back and forward, and the radius rods will probably fit on a 1987 Gambler. So it's the sport. Like it just continually goes around in circles. Every now and again, some guy will get a wild hair and decide to try some coils or something like that. Oh, wow, this guy's an idiot. Look at him go. And then he'll go back to torsion bars. And
the Blaney wing angle didn't come up there, yeah?
Yeah, like
you believe in that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's an advantage in it. There's a theoretical advantage in it. The problem is making it work. And what most sprint car guys run works on 99% of the tracks. That's all it is. You could build a car that's, you build a cantilever car or something like that. Go and have a bit of fun with that. That'll there's people out there that know what I'm talking about when I talk about a cantilever car.
We've got to do like a car build together or something.
Yeah, like
yeah, we'll do something smaller.
Yeah, I don't know.
We can fuck around with, but
maybe, I don't know. My stuff's all sitting there.
You work enough that we'd make it work. It's all good. I could show up 4 times in a month, and you would be like, "I'm done with it."
I don't know. Anyone that really knows how to build a race car can do it in a couple of hours.
I know how you operate. And it would be 3 to 6 a.m.
Yeah, that's it. That's how it works. So most productive time of the day. But no, there's the sprint car side of things, and this is what I love about running even when I go and run the modified, just playing around with, like you say, the redneck engineering side of things. How do we get this car to mechanically grip? Because they got the independent front ends, and like the sprint car's got a beam front axle, so it's fixed. And then getting like the modified, the late model, that sort of thing, getting the rear ends to jack around and move around in the cars and stuff like that. It's been fun learning it. I thought about how I could make it work on a sprint car, but I don't think I really want to make it work on a sprint car. So we'll see. Maybe I'll get the TIG torch out one day and put something together, but we'll see what happens.
I can't wait for that. And after watching Jordan Paulson was the fan that won the ultimate giveaway for Geo, and he had driven a sprint car before. And the track they drove on was not, him and Brett Moffitt in Geo's sprint car was not advantageous. It was not a normal Knoxville track. It was the driest I've ever seen a racetrack.
Or it was what was left over from the night before.
Yeah, I mean, it was like they could have watered that thing a lot more than they did. Jordan actually rubbed the tread off the tire. I don't know if you guys, it's on our YouTube. It's one of the videos there. We did like 19 videos, and I had to put however many on YouTube, and I wanted to make sure I got every ounce of it. But Jordan rubbed the right rear tire, like entire tread. I mean, it looked like you ran 30 laps in Ohio. It was just gone. And he ran 4 laps, maybe less. Might have been 3. But yeah, it was, Glenn has told me like, oh, we'll teach you how to drive a sprint car someday. Like if it ever works out, we'll do it. And you just got to like be not scared of wrecking it. And you can wreck it. That's how you learn. And I'm like, no, absolutely the fuck not. I don't ever want to do that because I will wreck the car.
Well, they all look the same.
I'm more confident now. I've been ripping the World of Allies game. They're coming out with a new one in September. I've been ripping it. I'm way more confident now than I was a year ago.
Well, like I said, they all look the same laying on top of each other. So,
That's a good one to end on. We'll be back. I'm going to have you back on. I have more questions that I have written down
I
from
don't know,
people.
man.
We didn't touch on late models,
I don't
but
know if anybody wants to hear my opinion on sprint car racing.
well, we'll get you back on. We'll get Bobby Pierce on here. He's good friends with me, and he's been driving really well. Someone asked, Tyler Erickson was his name on Facebook, asked who the best late model driver is right now. And I'd say Ricky Thornton Jr. at this moment. And him and Bobby are friends. It's fun behind the scenes story instead of answering his question. So apologize to Tyler. That is my answer. It's RTJ. I asked Ricky, and I told him, like, I'm friends with Bobby, and he knew the whole background of it. But basically, I'm friends with Bobby, and I was like, hey, if you want to trash him or anything, go for it. He's said he'd do the same thing if you would do it. And Ricky was like, no, I'm not going to trash Bobby. Screw that. I don't want any part of that whatsoever. And I begged him, like, hey, give like a little shove at him. And I tried to bait him into it in the question, and he wouldn't take it. So, no, Ricky's awesome, and he's winning a shit ton of races by a lot of seconds, and it's been cool to see.
About my only Bobby Pierce story is I stood next to him at the Wiener Nationals last year at driver's briefing, and I don't think he knows who I am.
Yeah, you told me that. I told you, like, tell him you know Connor, and he'll be like, you fucking idiot. You got to deal with that kid too.
Why would he want to talk to a B-mod driver?
Because you know Connor, and he would say the same thing I just said to you.
Nah.
Like that kid texts me at the worst times.
But I don't know. I don't know. My opinion on the late model deal. There's a few of them. Like Ricky's he's consistent week to week, but Davenport seems to come out at the big shows and run just as good. So
and where's Davenport's dominance been? You can't have two winners at every race. I get it. I feel like Davenport's had a quieter year compared to the last three.
Yeah, he has, but at the same time, it's still the same names in the front of late model racing, and I think a lot of it comes down to kind of what you said. It's not necessarily at that end of the field. It's not redneck engineering. They really are they're doing a lot of time on pull down rigs and stuff like that. But
yeah, and I do want to say when I say redneck engineering, these guys are more apt to drink beer with you than David Gravel, Brad Sweet, Kyle Larson, and I'm not hating on their beer drinking skills whatsoever. Gordy Gundaker will sit there and have 15 with you, right? Like but they're really smart at the same time. They have more engineering capabilities in a late model than you do in a sprint car, and they go to work with it. You look at the Flow Racing video a few years ago from Kevin Rumley's. Was it called the Machine or the Device?
The Device.
The Device.
Yeah.
In like shit that's been outlawed. Like angles of the back of if you take a photo of the back of a chassis of a late model, you will. I mean, you're scorched earth if you find the right people that see it. You're done. Like they're gonna be in your backyard yelling at you with pitchforks, right?
Yep.
There's so many intricacies of late model. That's why I say it's redneck engineering. It's because they're all great guys. They'll all drink beer with you. And they accept which rights to drink with America, but they're way smarter than the sprint car guys at the same time.
Well,
I shouldn't say way smarter. I should say there's a lot more details.
They're not way smarter. They're allowed a way different box to play in than what the sprint car guys are allowed to play in.
Oh, absolutely. There's more little things. If you can change this, you can change that. You can gain an extra half second. That makes more of a difference there than it does on the other side.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like the non-wing guys in the sprint car side of things have more of a box like the late models to play in. They have to use a mechanical advantage on the car to make the cars work and stuff like that. But at the same time, too, you've got the late models have got independent front ends in that they don't have that line axle or that beam front axle. You start playing with bump steer and all that sort of stuff, and it just changes the whole dynamic of the car, really. So, and plus the wing sprint car guys have got that great big crutch on top that it really has a big effect on what the car does. So, yeah.
Well,
It's different.
every year, except when the NASCAR trucks come, I get a guy older than the age of 50, 60 years old that comes up to me and says, like, oh, I'm ready to watch the real race cars this weekend. And it's on the USAC non-wing weekend. And
Yeah.
I look at him and I'm like, you're going to watch the real race cars that go 3 seconds slower than the regular ones? That's what we're going to watch here?
What's wrong with that?
Nothing. I'm just letting them know.
Yeah, well, big balls. Big balls. What does it take to drive a non-wing sprint car? Big balls. That's all you need to know.
That is completely true. And I probably should say less about that when you're on here because you're fucking damn good at it.
Oh, yeah, well, I was.
You win at Oski every time you're there. You going
No,
for
I went and shook a car down there last week and sucked. So we had the backup car last week. So
are you gonna go for Nationals week this year?
I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing next weekend.
That's fine. I know. I get that. Well, let's do an appearance.
Maybe.
You come down and get Glen Saville's autograph. You got to get your infield pass for the non-wing weekend.
You've got a better chance of getting me to tweet something on X or something like that.
Yeah, no, I'll give you the password. We'll have you do it all week.
Yeah, okay.
We're gonna make this year's Nationals gonna be bigger than ever. I got a lot of people in working with us and doing some stuff that we got a lot of great ideas around the corner. So
cool. You've heard it here, folks, live on Always Race Day.
Damn straight. Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate y'all. And I'm going to get Glenn back. Might be next week, might be the week after, but at some point we're going to get Glenn back. We're going to answer the rest of your questions. So appreciate y'all for tuning in. Thanks again to the Karl Auto Group. And this has been Always Race Day live on Thursday night.